Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to the 16th episode of my dirty chess tricks against Sicilian. In this episode, I'm going to show you some of the nice and cool tricks in the classical Najdorf from the white perspective where black commits the move 6e5. The opening arises after the following move order: e4, c5, knight to f3, d6, d4, c captures d4, knight captures d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, and now this thematic move a6 controlling the b5 square. Okay, the classical Najdorf start with bishop to e2. So as you can see, I have highlighted by the arrows. Very simple but effective plan of campaign by white. What he wants to do is he wants to play bishop to e3, castle on the king side, and then later on push forward with the f-pawn and generate a kingside attack. Now in the last episode I have covered the move e6. So if you haven't checked it out, I strongly insist you to watch that episode. However, in this episode we are going to concentrate on one of the most popular choice by black, namely e5. So what black is hoping for is an improved version of Sveshnikov Sicilian, where this knight cannot go to the b5 square. As per the database, knight to b3 and knight to f3 are the most common reply. However, in my episode, I always deliver a surprise package, and here my recommendation is this very cunning move, knight to f5. Which involves a lot of tricks, and black has to know exactly how he is going to handle the scenario. Now, as per the Sicilian theory, this move has been dismissed by all theoreticians. The simple reason is, in almost all the Sicilians, the break which black is looking for is d5, and by playing knight to f5, white has actually allowed this. Anyways, if you check this position in online database, there are 172 games played with this line, and as I have highlighted over here, there are two popular choice by black, namely d5 and bishop captures f5. Now before we look at them, there are a few other things we need to know, that other sideline moves such as g6 are not good at all. The simple reason is, after knight to e3, white is going to cement a piece on d5, which is not easy to stop, and in all these lines white get superior piece play. Well, same goes for the move knight captures e4, which at first sight looks very good because it wins the pawn tactically. But after white's next reply, knight captures g7 check, and after bishop captures g7 and the move knight captures d5, not only white has active piece development, but black king safety has been compromised, and no matter whichever side the king will go, there are always some holes to attack the poor king. So considering all these factors, let's start with black's two most popular choice, and the first move I want to consider is d5, which is very natural and you can literally expect from 80% of your opponent, and against it we are going to continue with bishop to g5. So attack on d5, and black response is force. He has to play either the move d4 or take on e4. Well, taking on e4 is a pretty bad one, and we have the first trick on the table. White can go with this forcing sequence: queen takes queen, king takes. Now castle on the queen side with a check. And if any piece comes in between, the resulting position is quite favorable to the white camp. So if black wants to keep his slight advantage, then he has to play king to c7 in order to hang on to his extra pawn. Well, at first sight, this position looks not that great, as white is a clear pawn down. But here, white has this tactical resource, knight captures g7, which not only regained the pawn, but it also doubled the black pawn, which later on can become clear-cut target. If black doesn't capture the piece, then obviously white is better. And the tactical point is, if black go ahead and take this knight, then after bishop captures f6, and the move knight to d5, we are regaining the piece with interest. So that is what happened if black capture on e4. More natural response is d4, attacking your knight. But here white has in-between move, namely bishop captures f6. If g captures f6, then black will get a double pawn and his king safety is an issue. So naturally, black has to capture with the queen. Afterwards, we are going to come forward with knight to d5. Two threats, so black has the only response, queen to d8, what else? And we reach to one of the most important position of this line. It is very important to understand that white cannot castle here. The simple reason is, after bishop captures f5, white indeed lose a piece. So that is right out of the equation. And once again, if you check it out in the database, you will find out that here white has tried various responses such as knight to g3 and the move c4. However, I am going to propose one of the most trickiest move in this position, namely bishop to f3. So not only we are activating our bishop and protecting the d5 knight, but if you look at this position, white has occupied the center with this tremendous knight and black has to evacuate them as quickly as possible. The amazing part about bishop to f3 is it has been tried only in 2 games, and that's why this will be a completely rude shock to your opponent. Now, if your opponent here continue with either the move such as knight to c6 or bishop to e6, then my recommendation is you should castle on the king side. And I have attached a sample line in the PGN which will give you a very good idea how to play such positions. But more natural for any black player is to play the move g6, kicking back this wonderful knight. Get ready guys, because now you are going to see one of the most amazing trick in this line, namely knight captures d4, bam! What a move! So suddenly white munch a pawn, and if your opponent doesn't capture the knight, then our knight can safely retrieve back to b3. So the critical question arises, what happens if black capture this piece? Afterwards, I think you already see it. Yup, it's queen captures d4, attacking the rook. The rook cannot move, so the only response is f6. And here you can play knight captures f6, but I think the position remain unclear. So as suggested by Strong Engine, my recommendation here is you continue with queen to b6, and no matter however black plays, he will get a lost position. The threat is very simple. White wants to play knight to c7 check. So black response is very obvious. Black has to play bishop to d6, and after that, remember this star move, rook to d1. And by force, now white is winning in all the variation. The only good move over here is bishop to e5. However, if your opponent continue with either move such as castle on the king side or the move knight to c6, then the simplest response is queen captures d8, Doesn't matter, however, black recaptures, king captures d8 and the move knight to b6. White is winning the piece back with few pawn in the backs. Okay, that's fine, but what happens if black plays bishop to e5? Well, here once again the line is very forced. We are going to play queen captures d8, and after king captures d8, knight to b6 is obvious response. Black's idea is he wants to play king to c7, and after knight captures a8, black can calmly play king to c6. So for a time being, yes, indeed, white is an exchange up. But if somehow black can trap that knight in the corner, then black is doing quite good. That's the hope, right? But we are going to demolish it with following sequence. Bishop to e2, bishop to e6, so black wants to capture that piece as quickly as possible. But now comes the saving resource, rook to f1, and however black wriggles, we are going to take our piece back. If g5, then g3 is a very strong reply. And as per the engine, the base sequence goes as follows. Knight to d7. Finally, black unleashed the attack. But white is right on time as he is going to counterattack with f4. Bishop captures b2. And now comes the final breakthrough, e5. So threat is very simple. Rook to d6 and nabbing the bishop. So bishop to d5 is obvious response. Afterwards, we keep attacking that bishop with bishop to f3. And the whole point is, after bishop captures f3, we are not going to capture that bishop immediately, but rather giving this intermediate check, rook to d6, which cut the communication of king and knight. And after king to c5 and rook captures f3, black still cannot capture our knight as his own knight hangs. Best black can do over here is knight captures e5, but even after this move, let's say pawn captures e5, bishop captures e5, rook to d7, and after rook captures 8 and rook captures b7, after the whole transaction, it turns out that white emerged with a clear exchange advantage. Okay then, let's see what happens if black capture on f5, which is the most common response at the lower level. However, I think this is one of the inaccurate way to handle this position, as after the simple move e captures f5, white threat is very simple, bishop to g5, knight to d5, and giving some problem in the black camp. So black response is almost forced at this position. He has to play d5. But even after this, we can simply play bishop to g5, attacking on d5. Here black can defend this pawn in a two-way. One, he can push forward, or other one is bishop to b4. Let's look at the first obvious response, d4, which in fact happened in 12 FIDE games. But I think after watching earlier part, you already have a clear-cut idea. First, we are going to capture on f6, and after queen captures f6, we are going to plonk this knight on a juicy square, knight to d5, and after queen to d8 and the move bishop to f3, white obtain a great deal of advantage. There is already an x-ray on b7 pawn, so knight c6 is obvious response, and after that, we are going to castle on the king side. Amazingly enough, even though this position looks so modest, it has a lot of hidden tricks. Here black has the obvious response such as bishop to e7 or bishop to d6, but against each of them, white has some devastating reply. The first move I want to consider is bishop to e7. So black is obviously want to castle on the king side as quickly as possible. However, after the move rook to e1, he should not castle. Yup, you heard it right. Well, guess what? A game between two masters continue with castle on the king side, and now white shows why this is a great mistake as knight captures e7 happen on the board. Obviously you cannot capture with the knight as e5 pawn hangs, so black thinks that there is nothing happening on the board and simply capture back with the queen, but what he overlooks is after the following sequence, bishop captures c6, pawn captures c6 and the move queen captures d4, suddenly white emerged with an extra pawn and did in fact win the game. In this position, the highestly played move is bishop to d6, which looks very obvious, but once again white has this lethal move in this position, f6, a wonderful pawn sacrifice, which, believe it or not, gives some great headache in the black camp. The point is, after g captures f6, white wants to play bishop to e4 and generate an attack on the light squares. Obviously black cannot castle, so in one of the game black continue with h5, stopping any queen intrusion, but even after that he does not prevail white's attacking scheme, namely queen to f3. f6 is the target, and surprisingly enough it is not easy to defend. Well, you will say, why not? I can simply play bishop to e7 and defend everything, right? Well, guess what? This is what happened in the game. But after white's next reply, it is very obvious that black is going to lose this game very fast. Now, before I move on, I like you to pause this video and find out that crushing move white has played. Are you ready? Did you find this deciding blow? Boom! And black has to take with the king. Yup. Let's see why he cannot capture with any piece. For example, if knight captures e7, then queen to f6 and white is winning. Okay, then what's wrong with queen captures e7? Well, I hope you find this tactical resource, that is bishop captures c6, and now white emerged with a piece up, because if he foolishly capture this bishop, then after queen captures c6, king to f8 and queen captures a8, white emerged with a whole rook up. So that means whether black like it or not, but here he has to capture with the king. And once your opponent king is in the center, then you know what to do. And this game is a model demonstration as white continue with his energetic style, queen to b3, attacking on b7. And it doesn't matter whether black continue with queen to c7 or rook to b8. Let's say in this game, black plays queen to c7, but after white's next reply, f4, the game is about to open. The major pieces are coming in the picture very quickly, and the king, which is stuck in the center, is a great prey for the whole white camp. Last but not least, what to do against bishop to b4? Well, I like to show you one of my own game where my 2300 rated opponent played this move, and I think this game gives you a clear path how good white position is. I respond very obviously, bishop captures f6. So black response is force. Black has to capture with the g pawn. Afterwards, I simply castle on the king side. Renewing the threat on d5, my opponent decided to give me the double pawn with bishop captures c3, and after pawn captures c3, yes, indeed, both the side has mutual pawn weaknesses, but I think white has a clear-cut target where black camp is lagging the target. For example, in the game, black complete his minor piece development with knight to c6. I respond with rook to b1, attacking on b7, and after the move b5, it's a game over time, just within 13 moves. Why? What's wrong with this move? It looks so nice, right? Well, the problem is white has this nice lever a4 which completely destroy black position. My opponent find nothing better than capturing on a4, but after that you can see now the soft target on the d5 square, and I immediately exploit it with queen to d3. So idea is very simple. I want to play rook to d1 and take on d5, where two a pawns are not going anywhere. My opponent castle on the king side. I played rook to d1, and now he continued with a3, to which I respond with rook to e1. I am not in a rush to capture on d5 square. My opponent finally defends the threat with knight to e7, but now comes the tactic, guys. Did you spot it? Yup, it's c4. So very obvious, black cannot capture on c4, as after queen to g3, his own queen hangs. So my opponent plays d4, but after c3, it is pretty clear that that pawn is going in a dustbin. He tried to be active on the queen side with queen to e5, but after pawn takes, rook takes a3, attacking the queen, queen captures f5, and the move queen captures d4. At the end of the critical sequence, not only white has a superior major pieces, but black king side is completely shattered down, and in fact those weaknesses I have exploited in the middle game and create a comfortable win. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoy and learn this wonderful tricky line starting with knight to f5, which will not only surprise your opponent, but if your opponent not respond accurately, which is likely to be happen, then you can win the game very quickly in the tournament practice. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.